Welcome everyone to our Digital Learning Ideas and Inspo for Shared Device Environments session. That is quite the mouthful, isn't it? My name is Mary Jane Wilcox. I'm the Education Support Officer for Connected Falkirk, Connected Learning and STEM. It's great to have you all here with us today. On the call, we've also got a very well-known face, our very own Kerry Abercrombie. Kerry is our Curriculum Development Officer for Digital Learning at Falkirk Council. Our emails are on this little slide here, just in case you do need to get in touch with us for anything. So today's session is all about getting the absolute most out of the Connected Falkirk shared iPads in your classrooms. Navigating digital learning in a shared device environment, like our 1 to 5 settings, brings its own set of opportunities and challenges. So on today's agenda, we plan to do the following. We're going to make sure that everyone is aware of what you should have access to as a 1 to 5 device teacher. We're going to explore smart logistical tips to minimise fuss, ensuring smooth management every time the devices are used. We're going to discover a range of engaging digital activities suitable for both collaborative group work, but also individualised learning within the classroom using shared devices. And then finally, I'll signpost to some further resources to support you in planning the activities for shared devices in your classrooms. So hopefully, by the time we wrap up, you'll feel more confident and you'll have some top takeaway tips and practical creative activities to transform those shared iPads into a powerful classroom learning partner. I'm firstly going to hand over to Kerry, who's going to get us started with some of our agenda, and she's going to have a look at what we should have and some of those logistical tips. Kerry?
Thanks, Mary Jane. So as Mary Jane says, we're going to start with the very basics of what you should have in your primary 1 to 5 classroom. And the answer is very simple. As you'll see on this slide, you should have access to one connected Falkirk shared device for every 5 learners in P1 to P5, meaning if you have a class of 30, you should have 6 devices. If you have a class of 20, you should have 4 devices, and so on and so forth. And crucially, these devices should be in your classroom. They should not be pulled together into a class set for the lower primary school. This is something that was asked many times at the beginning of Connected Falkirk. I think possibly because this is sort of how previous iPad equipment had been arranged in some schools. But for the Connected Falkirk devices, those should absolutely be in your classroom at all times, because the whole point is that every child in primary 1 to primary 5 has access to a device at a ratio of 1 to 5 all of the time. If children have access to a device at a ratio of 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 for a few hours a week, that creates quite a different learning environment, which I'm sure you'll agree. And it's quite difficult, I feel, to plan for that sort of holistic and responsive use of digital tools. It's extremely difficult to embed digital across the curriculum in that scenario. And most importantly, it's not equitable, because there's always somebody who books up the trolley loads and loads, somebody who has to take on that burden of taking care of the trolley, somebody who uses it all of the time, and then there are colleagues who either cannot get access or choose not to use their access. So in that case, some children are getting a lot of digital input and some children are getting none, just solely on the basis of access, and we don't want that. Now, fair enough, there are other factors that come into play with regards to how much children get to have hands-on digital inputs, but fundamentally, access should absolutely not be the thing that is stopping them. From time to time, we do get people who get in touch to say that they don't have enough iPads in their class based on the ratio. The calculation is quite specific, but if you do find that you don't feel like you have the right number of devices, I would suggest that you get in touch with connectedfalkirk.gov.uk, because we, of course, have records of how many shared devices each school has been given already, and indeed how many each school should have based on their 1 to 5 role. And I just want to give a quick word of warning that if you do get in touch because you feel that you don't have enough devices in your class, Please do remember that it's not just about your classroom, it's about how many devices have been provided to the school as a whole. So you might actually get the answer that your school has more than the amount of devices that they should have, which was something that happened quite recently actually when someone got in touch. But if you do have any questions about that, do get in touch with Connected Falkirk at falkirk.gov.uk. Now, it is also important to mention devices that existed prior to the Connected Falkirk programme. So some of you may find that you have more than 1 to 5, but some of those devices are not Connected Falkirk devices. And indeed, those devices that belong to the school rather than Connected Falkirk might be older. They might not be running the same iOS. They might not have the same apps. And while lots of people think that maybe having more devices makes it easier, I am fully empathetic to your cause because I totally understand that sometimes, depending on what you are doing, this can also pose challenges if you have that range of mixed devices. And the reason I bring that up is because we are talking today about the Connected Falkirk shared devices. So as we move on and Mary Jane shows us some activities, we've tried really, really hard to ensure that all of the activities today are wide-ranging and that they are compatible with as many types of device as possible. But it is a possibility that some of the things that Mary Jane shows might not be possible on those very, very old Connected Falkirk, those very, very old school devices that are not the Connected Falkirk ones. And that brings us quite nicely to the section about logistical tips, because my very first logistical tip would be make sure you know which of your devices in your classroom are Connected Falkirk shared devices and which ones are not. You will know the Connected Falkirk devices because they should all have the Connected Falkirk shared iPad background, which you see on the screen in front of you just now. So let's talk about logistics then. So here are some of my top tips for working in a shared device environment, and these have been gathered through hands-on experience. So I actually worked in a shared device environment for a long time prior to Connected Falkirk. As a media and English teacher, I've worked in environments at a ratio of 1 to 10, which was horrible, 1 to 6, and 1 to 3, as well as 1 to 1. And I actually spent around 5 years working in a 1 to 6 environment. I just want to share with you some logistical tips that I've picked up, found out along the way after much trial and error. I really truly believe that having your logistics sorted out makes things much easier, and it saves so many headaches. So this isn't the most exciting part of the session, but if you can get organised in a way that works for you and your class, getting to the learning is so much easier, and that really is what it's all about. It's almost like this section is the sort of classroom or resource management for iPads section. So I just want to start by talking about grouping. And it might be really obvious, so I apologise in advance to people who have already got this cracked. My classroom, as you can see here, was set up in groups. So in my media and English class, young people sat in the same place every day. Now, obviously, this makes grouping the iPads easier. I know for some that you won't be in a position to do that. You will perhaps work in the lower school with early level learners or first level learners. And the children in those classrooms might not necessarily have permanent spaces or seats all the time. But this was actually also true for me in media, because I also used to mix the pupil groups up fairly regularly for filmmaking production. So what I did was I assigned a device to the space rather than to the children or the group. So you can see here, I've got a group number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so no matter who was sitting at table number 4, every time they needed to use a shared device, they used number 4 for the duration of the project. So then it didn't matter which children were sitting at which group, because the iPad is assigned to the table, not the children. Again, as I say, this seems really simple, but I actually found that letting the learners take any iPad when doing group work caused me a logistical nightmare, because they'd maybe started something the period before on a different iPad. They had to remember which one they were using. By the time they had remembered, somebody else in a different group had come up to the shared iPads and taken the one that they had started to film on. So Things had to be transferred. There were arguments. There was a lot of to and fro in. It was just an absolute headache. Some of you might be in that place at the moment. And I can say that organising the iPads to match the group space and then moving the children was a light bulb moment for me. It provided some consistency and structure for using the iPads, which ultimately meant that we could get down to work quicker every single time. Now, lots of you, as I say, will be working in a play as the way environment, and you might not very well have everyday groups. And there's absolutely no harm in, if you're going to do a long-term project, assigning them iPad groups the same way that you might assign them reading groups or regular partners or teams. Now, of course, we had lots of situations where one child might use an iPad for something support-wise. You know, it happens all the time. They've got a broken wrist, so they need to type, or they've forgotten their glasses, so they need to work up close to the board. Maybe they're struggling with spag, so they need a little bit of a digital placemat to help them. Whatever it is, even in these scenarios, the devices clearly being established as belonging to a group space made this a whole lot easier. So if a young person was sitting at group 1, they would take iPad 1. If they were sitting at group 3, they would take iPad 3. And if I ever needed more than one iPad at one group at a time, that wasn't a problem because I could use other ones. I just got the child to maybe make a note in their jotter of which ones they were using. So if I've got 2 learners at group 2 who for a short period of time need an iPad every day, I know that if I'm not doing group work, I can assign group 2's iPad to group 2 and then maybe group 4's iPad to group 2. And I just make sure that Mary Jane, who's working at group 2, knows that she is working on iPad number 4. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, as I say, it does seem so obvious, but this is something that I think really, really helps. And it doesn't take long to implement. Now, identifying iPads is the next thing that I want to talk about, labelling, because this can be quite tricky. So I want to speak a little bit about it. The amount of times that I have been in a class and seen children look for something like a little mark on the case or a little tiny sticker that's been put on by the school just to try and identify which iPad is which is unbelievable. Now, we should be making this as easy as possible for our children. It should be obvious from the moment they pick it up without even having to turn on the screen which iPad is which. And it's actually so simple for us to do. It's quick, it's easy, and it will make a difference. Now, it's worth noting that the connected Falkirk shared devices, just like the one-to-one devices, you can't stick anything to the cases, but they do have the transparent back on the case, the same as your teacher iPad. So a slip of paper with a big number or even a nice design on it. So we can have the unicorn iPad, the rainbow iPad, the Gruffalo iPad. Something can be put inside that case to identify each one quickly and easily. And if we can look at the next part of the slide, you'll see the difference that that makes straight away. The child doesn't have to spend a long time looking for even that sticker, which still is quite good, but it's not quite good enough. Look at how easy we would be able to identify iPad number 5 or the unicorn iPad if we spent a little bit of time labelling these super, super clearly for our children and young people. Now, if you haven't done that, that's something that I would 100% consider actioning. When the children know which ones are which at a glance, it is so much easier logistically. And understand that perhaps in your school there has been labelling that has gone on and there might already be a sticker on there. That's fine. You in your classroom can add additional identifying labels to those devices. That's absolutely not a problem. Now, I actually know of a practitioner down in England who works with very, very young learners in a shared device environment. And what she does at the start of every year is that she puts the children into their group and they receive their iPad, and she actually does a whole lesson around the children choosing the iPad's name, giving it a personality, making a design for the back of the case, giving it things that it likes and dislikes, just trying to give the children an opportunity to feel like that iPad belongs to them and is part of their group. And she does say that this goes down very well. She notices that the children treat the iPad with more respect because they've had a stake in creating it, if you like. She says it helps to build teamwork, group identity, And she says that when the iPads are given this personality, it's easier for her to reiterate to them some of the routines and expectations around things like charging and storage. So she actually calls her storage spot for the iPad's bed. So for example, she'll say, oh, Frank needs to go to his bed now, he needs to have a little sleep, or how's Ariana? Does she need a wee nap? When she's talking about the charge left in the device. And I quite like that. It's a little novel idea for building a class relationship with their shared iPads. And that could sit alongside a class charter or rules or expectations around using our devices. Moving on then to storage, back to my highly detailed classroom map here, you'll see that I stored my shared iPads really close to my teacher desk, and this was absolutely on purpose. I specifically spent time making space for them here because I found that proximity to me meant that they were looked after properly. I don't know why, I cannot explain it. I don't know if it's because they got the iPad from a physical space in the room that they were less used to being in or less often in, if it was because they were directly in my line of sight, perhaps. But whatever it is, it definitely worked. And I found that actually my colleagues at the time, one in particular, who kept his at the back of the classroom, had no end of problems with them not being charged, not being put back properly in the right place, generally not being looked after properly. So in terms of storage, my first tip would be, if you can, keep those iPads as close to your teacher space as you possibly can. So where do we actually keep them though? Like, are we just chucking them on the side in a drawer, or are we setting the children up for success by actually having a designated place where they can put their hands on the right iPad quickly? And I say put their hands on the right iPad quickly because I've seen a lot of places where there's a designated space, but that space is maybe just a countertop. I would highly, highly recommend having an actual physical space for each iPad. So as you'll see on the next slide, I had my shared iPad in trays that will be very, very familiar to everybody. Now, this is a resource that I already had. It was in my classroom. It happened to be next to my teacher desk. I did a bit of jiggery pokery, cleared out 5 drawers because I had 5 iPads, and I just had one drawer for each iPad, with the drawer clearly labelled with each iPad number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each one, iPad number 1, iPad number 2, iPad number 3, iPad number 4, iPad number 5 goes into an individual drawer. Now, for some of you, space will be at a premium. So I do have on this slide a few other things that I have seen work. So the storage boxes, canvas ones are very good because they can kind of be squished together if you're tight on space. What is really important if you're using a storage box is that it doesn't have a lid, because you want to be able to charge the iPad while it is in its storage place. So of course for these you would put the iPad in upside down and charge in the top. They're widely available from all sorts of places, and actually as organizer influencers have become more popular, they're even more widely available than they used to be. I've also seen office letter trays on the bottom right here work really well, particularly where space around the teacher desk is really tight. Again, back to my idea of proximity to you being the safest possible place that they can be. I've also more recently seen these wooden dish racks, which there's actually a really good craft about making your own book storage at your bedside table with these, but we'll not get into that. But these wooden dish racks also work really well. The main thing there is just obviously making sure that the space between the spokes is wide enough for the thickness of an iPad. So we are by no means saying that you should go and buy any of these things, or that schools should be going and buying any of these things. It's just to give you an idea of the kind of thing that you might have lying around that could be repurposed to help you with logistics in your classroom. But definitely having that permanent established home for each device helps the children and young people with routine around using the shared iPads. And this, of course, is the same with charging. So my 3 lifesavers when it came to protecting chargers are very, very simple. Now, Again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it and that everyone should rush out and buy these things or spend money on these things. For this, I definitely used stuff that I already have. Some of you might be very lucky enough to have a multiple charging station in your classroom, which I've seen actually in a few schools. But if you haven't, you should have a charger for each of your shared devices. Now, every device did come with one. We are now 5 years into Connected Falkirk, and I do know that chargers can get lost or get damaged. It is unfortunate that I have to pass on the message of, it's the responsibility of the school to ensure that equipment provided by the local authority is looked after, and that does include chargers for iPads. Some people seem to think that chargers are exempt from this, but that is not the case. But you should have, there should be in your school somewhere, you were given at the time a charger for every one of your shared iPads. So I had a 5-bar extension cable, which I moved right next to my desk, so it was close enough to my storage solution that the pupils could charge while they were in the trays, make sure it was plugged in, make sure it was on charge, and that was part of their routine of using the device. And I think this is important to help them take responsibility for charging. So anyone who has used a shared iPad or a shared laptop trolley will know the acute pain of communal charging without any kind of accountability. And this way, I felt it took the pressure off of me as the teacher to always make sure that the iPad was charged, but it also helped the children to feel more ownership over their group iPad. It was their resource, not mine, and they had to make sure that they looked after it. Now, the chargers themselves, I had them labelled up to the eyeballs. So I had sticky label on the actual plug unit, and then I had a sticky label at the top end of the charging cable and a sticky label at the bottom end of the charging cable. So the one at the top, closest to the actual charging point that you plug into the iPad, that just had the number that the charger belonged to. So charger number 1, charger number 2, charger number 3, etc., etc. The one at the bottom, the sticky note on the bottom and on the plug unit, said in no uncertain terms that those chargers belonged to Miss Abercrombie 21A Media. And I believe I also wrote a big massive do not remove underneath those as well. Another thing that I did, I think about a year in, was that I stopped allowing the children to unplug the charger and move it somewhere else in the room. If they wanted to charge, they had to come to the charging station. And I actually kept that rule in place even once I moved to one-to-one device. Once I was one-to-one, I actually had a lot of children who would forget to charge their devices, and it's amazing how quickly they remember when they realise that they have to sit next to the teacher if they want to charge their device. Now, all of this might sound a bit over the top, but honestly, taking the time to organise the chargers and label them and have a really clear routine about how we use them, it really showed people that I was not messing around. I knew exactly what my classroom resources were. I knew exactly how they were supposed to be used, and I knew that these resources belonged to me and they were to stay in that room because they were for my children and my young people. Now, I'm making myself sound terrible, but I also didn't loan any chargers or iPads out to other teachers who had lost theirs or broken theirs, because that would have left my children and young people disadvantaged. I also used to, and this is a wee bit embarrassing, I actually used to unplug the extension bar with all the chargers in it and lock it away if I was going out of school, just because I really didn't want to take any chances with those chargers going walkies. And that might all sound a bit over the top, but I'll leave you to decide whether you want to go that far. But what I will say is that in 5 years of working in a 1-to-6 environment, I did not lose one single cable or one single charger. So it is possible and it does work. Now, I'm telling you all this, it's right before Christmas, so you don't obviously have to go and set all this up, right away, but please do consider spending some time, if you haven't already, doing some work around the logistics and the organisation of your device labeling, the storage, and the charging solution that you have, and give some heed to the idea of how you group your iPads and therefore then how the children access them for learning. I promise you it will make a difference. Mary Jane, I'm going to hand back over to you so that you can get sorted for the next section. But if you have any questions about any of the logistical stuff, you can feel free to drop that in the chat and I can come back to you in the chat there. Mary Jane.
Thank you so much, Kerry. I'm still remembering I'm group 2, iPad 4. I know it. I have never asked Kerry to borrow a charger because I have mine labelled up to the eyeball. So I don't know if she will share or not with me going forward. I might try it out when I see her. But I do know that obviously she's talked a lot about the success of making sure those chargers are, she keeps an eye on them, and it was something that I did take back to school after I met Kerry and learned about that. So I can vouch it does work, which is good. So, okay, now we're going to have a look at different ideas and some Inspo activities to support you with your shared class devices. We really want to emphasise here that you don't need to reinvent the wheel to use the devices with your pupils. The technology isn't about creating a separate subject called digital learning or simply learning on an iPad. Instead, we're going to think of these devices as a set of tools that are intended to enhance and support the lessons, learning and teaching experiences you are already delivering in your settings. These examples that I'm going to show you today, they're based around things that myself or Kerry has taught in our own classrooms, or things that we've maybe seen across Falkirk classrooms when we've been out visiting or people have told us about. But they're by no means the only way to do things. They are simply examples of things that have either worked well for us or things that we've found useful and engaging for pupils. However, you will be able to see how these you will be able to see how these examples can be easily adapted to any area of the curriculum in your setting. Some of the ideas I will show you will be a demo that you'll just kind of watch along with. Some you'll be invited to follow along with me as well. What I will say is that the iOS that I am running on at the moment is iOS 18.6.2, I think, off the top of my head. So please be aware that if you are using a device that is on a slightly different iOS, some of the features or some of the places where these features might be, they might not be exactly as what's on my screen. But if you do have any issues, please feel free to pop a message in the chat or equally ping me an email later on and I can help with anything in regards to that. Okay, so we're going to move on to our first inspiration activity. And for the context for this, we're going to focus on literacy and specifically on how we can incorporate our shared devices into our reading plans, because we all know that reading is such a huge part. We always aim to expose our pupils to reading as much as possible. And crucially, we want to inspire them to read for their own enjoyment. This next example is a beautiful way to achieve this, where pupils record themselves reading a story aloud, whether they work as a reading group or in partners or even as individuals, because that obviously happens in our classrooms as well. To create these recordings, we will be using the audio recorder option within the GarageBand app. So I'm going to walk you through the steps for this and I invite you to follow along with me. What I would then do once I had finished recording my GarageBand audio is I would be able to save it and then I would be able to upload it as a QR code for pupils to use. So in my files, I have one that I did practice with yesterday and it's called My Story. And I'm going to try and see if it will let me play some of the volume, which is just me talking absolute nonsense. Now, I'm not going to bore you with a story here, but I'm just going to talk for a few seconds. Okay, so that was me practicing a little bit yesterday using it and recording. I wasn't going to bore anybody with a story, but I can save that as an audio file on my iPad. The magic then happens when we make this audio accessible to the whole class. So when I have saved that in my files, and again I will make sure that I show you this in the video that I send on to you afterwards, I can use a host site to save this, and the one that we have previously used with Connected Falkirk, and you may already be aware of it, is one called Vocaroo, and this allows me to upload an audio file, and from there it allows me to create a QR code. Now this QR code can then directly, you can print it off and directly attach it to books. It could be displayed prominently in your classroom around your different areas that you have set up. It allows pupils to scan it, sit back, relax, and enjoy a story that's actually read by a peer in the classroom, or even yourselves if you're going to read instructions or stories and you want pupils to have a little listen. Now, what I do have, which hopefully it will work, fingers crossed, is an idea of what this actually looks like. We have a lovely example here, and I think my screen has, oh no, there it is. Sorry about that. It's a wee bit laggy at the minute. We've got a lovely example here from Aria, who at the time of recording this was a primary 2 pupil. And Aria reads us the story of Meg and Mog. So if you open your camera app and scan this QR code, it will take you to that Vocaroo site that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and you'll be able to hear Aria reading this story. What I will do is I'll just give you a little minute to listen to the first minute of Aria's story there, and then we'll join back in. Hopefully you've enjoyed hearing what you've heard so far of Aria reading Meg and Mog. Not only can this project inspire reluctant readers to try recording their own voices, but these audiobooks can also actively support other pupils who may have some difficulties within reading, or simply just need that little bit extra help by hearing a peer model some fluent reading. It's definitely a nice idea. And in terms of group work and collaborative work, pupils could be reading stories together, different characters, different voices, sound effects, etc., etc. So it is a really, really nice activity. I'm going to move on to our next inspiration activity for today. And this time we're going to be exploring a tool that's on every single iPad, but often gets overlooked for its full potential, and that's the camera app. Now, when it first comes to mind, we often think of the camera for just taking photos or videos, but with a few clever tricks and features, it becomes a powerful enhancement for learning. And we're going to look at 3 features within this app today. Now, first up is slow motion. This feature is fantastic for helping pupils observe subtle details in movement that are just simply too fast for the naked eye. The slow-mo feature is brilliant because it allows us to see moments that are usually just a blur, and it gives us time to analyse them. Now, you'll see that I'm playing a wee video in the background here. It's a wee example video that Kerry passed on where they're doing a science experiment. There are some other, there's loads of areas, but some other examples of where this might be a good feature to use. Another science example, for instance, you can slow down and examine things like simple machines in action. You could watch a lever move or a pulley lift. You could capture how water flows, a plant moving in the wind, subtle details of a chemical reaction, like what's happening in the video. I've previously used it in classrooms as well to observe the force of friction on different surfaces with little toy cars, which has always went down really well. For subjects like PE and movement, it's incredibly powerful as a reflective tool. So pupils can film each other executing a dance move or a jump or a sports technique, and then they can play it back in slow motion to easily spot where they can redefine and improve their performance. In art, for example, as well, it lets you focus on process over product. So observing how maybe paint spreads or how a material reacts to pressure, opening up new avenues for discussion about texture and technique. Slow motion turns those quick actions into detailed learning opportunities. And imagine pupils maybe filming something really simple, then collectively analysing it frame by frame together. It can spark incredible discussion and detailed observation. I'm not going to do a recording demo just now for this, but what I will do is after the next feature, I'll show you where to access this in the camera app so you know exactly where to go. Now, the next camera app feature that I'm going to show you is time lapse. So if slow motion lets us see fast things slowly, time lapse lets us see slow things quickly. Now that was definitely the tongue twister I didn't know that I needed today. So it condenses long periods of time into short, engaging videos. So why would we even use it? What exactly can pupils capture? Well, the possibilities for this are brilliant for observing change. So again, some examples in science. Time-lapse is ideal for watching slow processes, things like observing plant growth over days, monitoring ice melting, tracking how shadows change throughout the school day, or even documenting decomposition. It makes lengthy processes instantly observable. I know Kerry, in her personal life, has used it to film the birds at the bird feeder, or how the snow accumulates in our beautiful back garden, which is really nice. In art, it's also fantastic for documenting the progress of a large art project or construction. This gives pupils a video record of their work, and it shows how their creation developed from start to finish. So I'm thinking of my experience in primary one, Play As The Way set up. We had a construction corner, watching pupils construct whatever came to mind from start to finish over the course of the day or the section of the day, etc. It was really good. I'm thinking even maybe about project work. You can use it to capture various stages of a collaborative classroom display or building different models, etc., giving a really satisfying overview of the entire team effort. It helps turn things that are usually too slow to notice into quick, engaging evidence of learning. Now, again, I won't do a full demo here because genuinely to record a time lapse, we would be here for hours and hours. It would fill your whole CPD manager requirements for the year if we sat here to do that. But to give you a real idea of what the final result looks like, I've got a little video on the screen of a previous time lapse that the Connected Falkirk team created. Now, you will notice that we are wearing masks. It was during the COVID years, and it was when we were allowed to meet back together and we were preparing for the one-to-one deployment. And you'll be able to see that within the video, we are unboxing iPads, we are piling them all up at the front of the screen you can see there. And I'm busy in the background. My job was organising cardboard, which I really, really liked. So Kerry's organisational tips for classrooms right up my street. But it's a nice little memory for Kerry and I, but it also shows you exactly how that time lapse can work over a period of time. Now, Kerry, I can't actually remember how long we were in that classroom for, but it was hours on end.
Yeah, it was. That is a couple hours work. What I will say as well, though, Mary Jane, is the way the video is playing both for this one and the slow-mo within Keynote isn't quite the true representation.
Yeah.
It's lagging a bit because of the streaming to WebEx. So when you do this yourself, the video's not as janky as it's showing on the screen just now.
Yeah. Also, a little tip there, if you are filming time lapse, please do think about the charge and battery life of the device. Because if you are leaving the device left on for a period of time to record, the battery will drain. And also just a little cautionary note, please don't leave devices plugged in overnight if it's not safe to do so, etc., and leave it unattended. So what I'll do is I will open the camera app just now and I will show you where to find that. So on my device here, in the bottom right hand corner, you will see that it's currently selected as the photo option. And if I just scroll my finger down, it says obviously there's a video, it says slow-mo, and it also says time lapse there as well. So that is where you would find those two options. And just like recording a video, you would tap the red button to start recording and then the red button to stop recording as well. Okay, so that is where you would find that. So hopefully for the video examples and some of the contexts that I've just mentioned, you can see how those long periods of slow change are compressed into one quick engaging clip. Thinking about those discussions that could be generated with pupils in your class, like what did you notice happening there, what changed? It's just a fantastic way to engage pupils with processes that are normally too slow to observe effectively. So on to the third feature, we are going to look at markup, which is within our camera app as well, specifically using it with photos to explore various different things. It could be shapes, it could be textures, it could be labelling, etc. It's brilliant for visual literacy, descriptive writing, and even early years exploration as well. So how exactly can we use this markup feature in practice so that it powerfully supports all the different subject areas that we cover as primary teachers and in our P1 to 5 settings? So art and design, for example, you have pupils taking photographs of different textures. It could be bark or brick if you're out on nature walks. It could be leaves on the ground. You would then use markup tools to circle and highlight where they maybe identify lines or patterns or specific shapes or different elements. Literacy, it becomes a great visual prompt for descriptive writing. You could ask pupils to highlight textures or circle textures that they can feel with their eyes in a photo, which would then support generating rich vocabulary when they start writing. And of course, in maths, it turns the whole classroom into a learning environment. They can take photos of everyday objects and use the markup tools to identify and trace 3D or 2D objects. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to take a little photo just now, and I'm going to try not to get this mess of my desk in. But I'm going to show you my most favourite drinking tumbler at the minute, because I am a very big Wicked fan. So I've been using it all week. Now, there are two ways that I can find this photo to mark up. Under the button where I pressed for taking my photo, there is a little thumbnail, and I can tap on that and it will pop up. But I can also go in via my Photos app, which is the tile with the nice colourful flower burst on it, and it's going to be that last photo that I took there. To access my markup tools, I'm going to look at the bottom of my screen, where you will see that I've got the option of little sliders. I'm going to give that a tap. And then in the top right, I have a little pen icon, and I'm going to give that a little tap as well. And that is going to bring up all of my different options for markup. Now, you've got a whole range here. You've got pens, pencils, highlighters. One of my absolute favourites is the calligraphy pen. It makes my writing look absolutely beautiful when I'm using the iPad, and I use it a lot. It's one of my favourites. Terry can vouch I was definitely a crayon girl before, but since they brought out this the calligraphy one, I'm absolutely addicted to it. So that's my favourite one. So I can use various different tools here to do exactly as I said. So if I was identifying letters in primary one on something, I could say, right, today we're looking at the letter D. Can you identify a word with the letter D? So I could be circling things like that. Or if I'm looking at shapes, I could say, right, we're looking at rectangles. Can you identify any rectangles? And I could see that that's a kind of rounded rectangle there. Obviously your pictures will be a lot more interesting because they'll be within your classroom environments or out and about, and not obviously just a desk. But you can highlight different things. You can add text, you can add shapes, you can add stickers, etc. as well, allowing the pupils to transform a simple photo into an interactive canvas that could be used for observation or analysis. It's fantastic for generating vocabulary, as we said, exploring different art elements, spotting those mathematical shapes, as well as supporting creativity in many subject areas that you are teaching across your settings. Now, to save that, I just tap done in the top right-hand corner for the first time, and then again, just to make sure that it saves to my camera roll. What I also really like about using markup is if I go back in to the sliders again, it allows me to revert back to the original picture as well. So if I did need to do that to redo a task, I can have that option as well, which is really, really helpful. So that is the camera app so far. Kerry, is there anything coming up in the chat so far to cover, etc.?
Nothing so far in the chat. Everybody's been pretty quiet. This would be a good opportunity maybe just for us to pause for a couple of moments, see if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah.
So if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I was going to say something about markup. Yes. One thing to note with the markup tools is that they are slightly different in different native apps. So you can have the markup tools in Photos, but you can also have the markup tools in Notes and in Keynote. But just note that calligraphy pen isn't always available. It very much upsets me when I go to Keynote and want to use the calligraphy pen and it's not there. So just be aware that the tools available in markup differ slightly.
Slightly, yeah, app to app, because I know there's options in Pages as well, but they're not quite the same.
Yeah, the ones in Photos and Notes are the same though. So if you're used to using the ones in Notes, the ones are the same for markup. No questions in the chat, Mary Jane, and it doesn't look like anyone's typing, so let's move on.
Yeah, I'll just keep going. So our next idea here is digital scavenger hunts. So digital scavenger hunts offer fantastic, engaging entry point for familiarising our learners with essential technology skills. We're all deeply familiar with the traditional scavenger hunt, where players explore their environment to find items listed by whatever's created it or whoever's created it. And by making this experience digital, we gain significant benefits. We immediately save time and money on printing costs, and crucially, we allow our pupils to develop basic digital skills, but in a fun context. So I'm going to open another template here that our wonderful Kerry has created. And every time I look at it, I just absolutely love it to bits. This digital format that Kerry has created, it's easily shareable, and it then becomes a permanent record of the pupils' work and attempts. So while a very simple version might just involve sharing a list and having the pupils use those markup tools to maybe tick things off or circle images or whatever it is, we can easily elevate this experience, even right down to our youngest learners. I know that Kerry has used this example for our lovely ELC pupils as well, learners there, and we use Keynote for this. So with Keynote, pupils would tap the plus icon, which is on the screen. So you see, if we look, for example, my favourite colour is green, so I'm going to navigate towards the green one. And if I'm using this colour hunt, I would tap. I then get a few different options. So I can take a photo right there and then if I'm out and about, or if I'm in the playground doing something, or I'm moving around the classroom. Or I could also choose a photo if it's something I've maybe already snapped that photo of. But I'm going to take one just now. I'm going to let it... there we go. And I've already mentioned it once. I'm going to mention it again. I'm going to take a picture of my lovely, excellent green, what would you call it? A water bottle. It's a kind of tumbler style thing, I would say, because it's green. So there we go. Amazing. So pupils can easily tap that. They just open their device, they snap the required item, and then they use that photo within their hunt. Now, this streamlined process automatically places their visual proof, and it can also be a video, which is great, into the correct spot on the slide. And it makes that it makes a digital documentation, and it makes that photography both engaging and remarkably accessible. If you would like to create your own scavenger hunts like Kerry, so Kerry has a few examples on this template for us. There is a shape hunt, which I just think is the cutest. I love it. And there's also a number hunt as well here. These templates are on the DigiLearn Folk blog, with full instructions and support to get you started, and even the cheeky little templates as well. And I never say no to a cheeky little template. So I will make sure that I include all that information in the follow-up email for you as well, so that you have access to go and use this resource if you require it. Just a little note to be aware of at the moment. We have been made aware that some devices are currently experiencing issues with some of their keynotes, and this is something that we are actively looking into for a resolution at the moment. But we just wanted to point you towards this resource, so that once access is restored, you have it there ready and raring to go. Kerry, is there anything at the moment that you want to come in and say, because I know you are the creator of the scavenger hunts?
Yes, so I used Canva to make the base of these, just in case anyone's wondering where I got all the artsy stuff from. I didn't draw any of that. That is all taken from Canva. All I did was I made a document in Canva that was 16 by 9, which is the size of a traditional slide in Keynote or PowerPoint or slides or anywhere like that. And if Mary Jane, if you can just tap where it says number hunt on that
Hmm.
slide. What you should hopefully see is that what this actually is just one big picture that I have then locked on the slide. And then the individual little images with the pluses are just placeholder images. So I've made a little picture that says tap, whatever that says there, tap the plus to blah, 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 blah. And all I've done is put that in as a picture, and then in the function, the little paintbrush, I've chosen make a placeholder or set as a placeholder. On that link that I've put into the chat, there is also, I'm pretty sure on that page, there's description of how you go about making your own one as well.
There is, yeah.
If you're not into these templates, but you think, oh, that's quite a nice idea actually, then that's something that you can do. When we show this to ELCs, they tend to really start thinking about that what matters to me work that's done in early level, and having a deck that has a setup slide, but one for every child, who throughout the course of the first couple of weeks or first couple of months go through and fill out a slide each with maybe their favourite place in the classroom, their favourite thing to do in the classroom, their best friend maybe, you know, all sorts of different things that they could collect, that speaks to who they are and what their interests are and how they're finding primary 3 or primary 4 or whatever it might be. But yeah, there's lots of use for a scaffold. I would like to call this a scaffolded scavenger hunt, because you're providing this scaffolded digital material, but you're letting them go off and actually get hands-on with the tech themselves to fill it out.
Yeah, I'm thinking in particular, Kerry, I've done quite a few kind of topics around, probably more in primary 1, but like my school and me and how they're getting used to the school and things. And we've always went on a wee guided tour and had a look for all the really important places within the school. So something like that would be perfect as well if you're running that topic, etc.
I've also seen a really beautiful end of year one being done, where each child gets a slide and it's like they fill it out. Sometimes actually they fill it at the start of the year. This is me at the start of primary 5. This is my favourite subject. This is my, you know, this is my best friend. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And then they do the same task again at the end, and then they have 2 slides that show how their tastes and things have changed over the course of the year.
Well, that's really nice. There's so many great options for it. I love a scavenger hunt. They're just so easily adaptable to different contexts, which is great. Okay, our next idea. Now, this would not be a Mary Jane CLPL session if I didn't mention one of my most favourite apps on this device, the Notes app. Now, as a teacher, and also in my personal life as well, I have to admit, I use the Notes app for everything. I use it for taking notes. I use it for planning. I use it for checklists. I've got a shared note with my husband and we use it for a shopping list. I've got one when we go traveling of all the places that we want to see and do, and etc. So you name it, I can find a way to use the Notes app for that. It's one of my personal talents, I would say. But one of my favourite, and sometimes again very overlooked, tricks for using the Notes app is as a digital whiteboard or a show me board within the classroom. No faffing about downloading other apps, it's already built in. Goodbye to the dried up whiteboard pens that never seem to have a lid. And also goodbye to the questionable looking dusters that are quite often damp when you go to use them, and we definitely don't try and question why it's damp. But I'm going to show you obviously where the Notes app is at the moment. It's just going to come out, and it's the little icon that looks like a little notepad with the little yellow top on it. And I am going to open this up. Now, I've used that beautiful calligraphy pen to write this, as you can see. But it gives me a great blank canvas. So to start my blank canvas, if I tap in the top right-hand corner of my screen, you can see there's a little box with a little pen. if I tap anywhere on the screen, the keyboard will appear, but I also have the markup options on the top right. Again, it's the little pen icon, and they pop up at the bottom. And you'll see here that that calligraphy pen that I do love is there as well. So you can use this with classes, with groups. I can use my finger to draw or to write. I just think that makes my handwriting look beautiful, which sometimes it's not. My handwriting can be messy, but I just think it always makes an improvement. So it is such a really, really easy app to use, and pupils can navigate it really easily as well to use as a show me board. Now, because we're online just now, I can't try it in a way that I would if you were in front of me. I wouldn't be able to see your screens being used because we're not in the same room. But if I was going to ask you a question, and you were in my class in front of me, and I asked you the answer to, for example, 1 + 1, on your device, I'm going to ask you to write that, and then I'm going to ask you to show me in 3, 2, 1. Here is a little photo of what that would look like in the classroom if the pupils answered that and then turned their device around to show me their answer on their device. Kerry, is there anything in the chat so far? I'm just doing a wee check-in to make sure I'm not missing anything.
No, nothing in the chat. Very quiet group today, and I know some of you on this call today are not quiet people.
Well, there is a little bit more interaction coming up in some of the other activities, we'll be pleased to know. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot of voices as we go on. I'm feeling very much like a Disney teacher at the minute with this lovely little classroom with whiteboards. I was very pleased with myself on that one. Right, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is extension activities. Now, I'm going to give a little shout out at this point. She's not on the call today, but this is an idea that was shared with Kerry as something that Melissa at St Francis has used within her classrooms, and it's using QR codes as extension activities. So this is really about managing student pace and providing rich, meaningful extension activities that are easy and effective, and it moves beyond that traditional stack of paper fast finisher sheets. When I first started teaching many moons ago, I was always panicked about, I need to get the fast finishers, and you know, as a teacher you then build up all these activities as you go on. But with this we can leverage the power of our devices and use simple QR codes to create engaging, self-directed learning stations right in our classrooms. Now, I do have a couple of QR codes on the screen, and as I'm speaking, you're welcome to scan them and see where it takes you. So in my imagination, in a classroom, I would be using maybe some kind of classroom bunting or dedicated posters within specific areas. Each one would hold the unique QR code. Pupils who finish their core task early, or if they're ready for maybe a differentiated challenge, they can simply grab a device, scan the code, and that would instantly direct them to their next task without a huge amount of teacher intervention. Now, the beauty of this system is the variety and the depth that you can offer from it. For example, the codes on this slide, one takes you to an interactive educational game that practices numeracy. Another leads to the instructions for a creative STEM activity on Lego education. And another leads to a story for further reading, which could also be a QR code that you've created using GarageBand audio recording and converted to a QR code, etc., so that the pupils could then be listening to their peers reading a story, etc. This approach not only provides instant differentiation, but effectively turns your classroom walls into a constantly accessible digital resource hub, and it gives pupils true autonomy and ownership over their learning path, their own pace, and in some cases, for some areas, their own interests as well. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of chat interaction here just to check you're all still with us. Now that I've showed you this particular slide with this idea, can you think of any areas in your current classrooms where this would work quite well? What would you pop a QR code up? Or if you're already using something like this, where is it taking you? We're really keen to know. So the next idea in Inspo is we are going to explore how Curipod can revolutionise how we deliver and assess learning in a collaborative environment. Now, again in the chat, has anyone used Curipod in class before, or is this maybe the first time that you've seen it? It might be a mixed reaction, Kerry, I'm not sure, but if you pop that in the chat, I'll obviously keep going. What we are going to do is have a basic tour of some of the different types of activities that you could include when using a Curipod in a shared device environment. It's a fantastic platform for creating engaging interactive lessons, but its real power often lies in its strategic implementation. So while this platform can be used as one device per pupil, it also works really well where a small group shares a single iPad, like in our 1 to 5 settings, which we're all here for, obviously. So when you launch the Curipod session, which we will do in a second, the entire group must work together as a cohesive unit. They collaboratively work to discuss and negotiate or produce the final answer before typing or answering with their collective response. They engage in various different, or they can engage in various different interactive activities with the options of polls, word clouds, drawing tasks. The single device per group model ensures every student has a stake in the outcome. It promotes rich teamwork, critical thinking, and communication skills, because pupils are required to verbalise their ideas to their peers before the designated scribe, or however you set up the instructions of the task, inputs the answer. And then Curipod can also give instant formative feedback on the collective understanding of each team, which is really helpful. So we're going to give this a wee shot, and I'm going to ask you to step into the shoes of my pupils. All the questions that I've designed today have been designed for you to answer as people with their own devices. So when you are creating or designing for groups, please do think about the types of questions that you would ask the groups and how you would then ensure that they answer as a cohesive group, etc. So I'm going to open up Curipod. And it's always good because I'm still logged in. And I'm going to tap on the session that I have set up today. Now, what's nice about Curipod is I can manually edit and insert the activities that I've chosen, but there is also an AI within Curipod that can help you generate context, etc. as well. And in the follow-up, there is a little guide that will take you a little bit further into that. But today we're just going to focus on some of these selected activities that I have set up. So this is what my Curipod at my end looks like as the teacher. Now I'm going to start the lesson, and I'm going to ask you to scan the QR code on the left-hand side of the screen, or go to curie.live in the browser and pop in the pin that you can see. Now, names will be anonymised, which you will see on the screen, because we've already got Cool Platypus joining us in the, we've got Rolling Lamp. This is what I always enjoy, the anonymised names. But I will ask you for your real name, so then as the teacher, I've got that information in case I need to do any follow-up, etc. If you were then using this as a group, the pupils could put their group name in instead of their real name. And again, with what we say is our connected Falkirk line, pupils only ever put first name and only, or first name and first initial if there's a double in your class, but this would probably apply more to group names here. Okay, I'm just going to give another second or two to get in. I think we've got 8 people in so far. Perfect, right, I am going to move on just because I'm watching time is in the background. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to launch the first activity. So here we go. You're going to answer the question, and this is a poll. What I like about Curipod, and you will see it as you go on, is I can see how many people have answered. So if I start it just now, I'm going to let you answer it on your end. Now you can see I've got a little number above my timer that's going up because people are answering, so I can see how many people have already answered. Now it is on 6. I had 8 join me in my initial screen, so I know that if somebody needs a bit extra time, I can also add that time on if people need an extra bit of time. So we can see, what idea have you found most interesting? Oh, Kerry, scavenger hunts in there, which is good. Extension activities and the garage band as well, which is perfect. So we've answered the first question, which was a poll. I didn't need to add any time because you were all super quick, which is really good. What I like about this as well is when I move on to my next slide, you can't see that yet. But what it should now say on your device is, please look at the big screen. Now that serves as a reminder for pupils to tune into your discussion or your further instructions for the activity. It doesn't allow them to move any further forward with the activities. It keeps them on track. So as you can see, I've moved to my next screen, but that yet hasn't happened for you because I have to control the start activity. I have that option in the bottom right of my screen on my device. Now that's because this platform is designed to support the teacher by controlling the pace. So it allows for that essential teaching and discussion time before you then open up whatever next interactive slide is for your pupils to respond. Now this is unlike some similar quizzing platforms like Kahoot or Bluekit, where they jump straight into questioning and there's not always a lot of time for those meaningful discussions or any scaffolding. And that's sometimes okay in some contexts, but because I am teaching concepts or I'm testing understanding here, I really want that time for discussion built in. So I'm going to start this next activity, which is going to be a word cloud. You can submit up to 3 answers for this. So I'm going to press start. I'll give you a little countdown and you can answer the question, which curricular areas are you going to implement one of the ideas into? Now you see in the bottom right, I again can see how many people are answering. I've then got that +1 minute. So if I feel that when I'm doing this, that pupils maybe need a little bit extra time, I can add an extra minute on. What's also really good is I can end the activity early, so I don't have to wait and sit for that timer to run out, which is really, really good. So everybody's done. And you can see some of these options. So kind of got a lot like literacies right in the middle there, numeracy, STEM, IDL, social studies, loads of different ideas there on the screen. Now at the bottom, I can also just go back to show slide. I can switch between showing the slide and showing the results, which is really good if I want to jump between and give myself a little bit more time to discuss with pupils. It doesn't always jump straight into the results, which is quite nice. Again, building in a little bit more time before you then showcase the results and have that further discussion there. Okay. The next one, I think, let's have a look. I'm going to move on. This is an open-ended question. What I also like about Curipod is when I've set this up, I've put a 2-minute timer on it because I felt like it might take 2 minutes. I can adjust that as I go depending on my observations of the class and how they are coping with the task, etc. So I can increase and decrease the time by 30 seconds, which makes it really reactive because obviously you always estimate as a teacher how long you think it takes to do something. But there's been many, many times that I have went to do something and thought, wow, I've really overshot here. Or, oh, actually, I needed a lot more time. So I really like it for that reason because it allows me to adjust on the spot, which is excellent. So I'm going to press start to let you answer this. And this is just open-ended, but it will allow you to submit more than one answer. From all the ideas so far, which one are you going to take forward?
Just while people are answering that, Mary Jane, as well, obviously we won't have time to go into it today, but the content moderation tools within Curipod are really excellent to get a live idea of what the children are doing on the devices. But we will provide a link to somewhere where you can see that in action elsewhere.
Perfect. I am just going to use that end activity as an example to show you, but also because obviously I'm watching my time as well. You can see I've got 10 answers. Again, it doesn't jump straight into results, but if I do tap results, it's going to show me all the results that I have in a kind of column stacked way, which is really, really nice. Now, the last one that I am going to show you is the drawing activity. Now, this is one of my favourite types of activity on Curipod. And the question that I've set up is actually based off an idea that Aileen Wallace from Graham High School used the other day when she did a little spotlight on Curipod for us. And she had told us that it was World Cupcake Day, and today is apparently World Kindness Day. So I thought we would do a little kindness themed question here. Now, I was going to ask you to draw a simple act of kindness. However, based on timings, I think we might not have a lot of time. So I am going to reduce the time to a minute and a half. You can either draw a simple act of kindness or write a simple act of kindness using the whiteboard tools. And then what will happen after is we'll go into a very quick vote, which will allow us to vote for the random act of kindness that we think is the best or the best drawing, etc. So what I'll do is I'll press start to let you start that. And again, another example of being able to estimate the time when you're maybe running a bit short on things or you've got a little bit more time, you can increase or decrease that by your 30-second increments, which is great. Okay, I'm excited to see some of these random acts of kindness. This was one of the last things I did with some of my class before I came out to this role. So I'm excited to see if there's different random acts of kindness that people think of that we hadn't.
Yeah, get some inspo.
Love a bit of inspo.
Kindness out into the world.
Yeah. So we've got a wee bit of time with 40 seconds coming up left just to see what these random acts of kindness are looking like. Now, the one that we did on Monday's session, Aileen was asking us to draw cupcakes because it was World Cupcake Day. That was fun. That was really fun. And a lot of really, really good drawings there, which is always nice to see the pupils because we've obviously got some amazing creative pupils within our classrooms. So it's nice to see. We've got 10 seconds left and then I'm going to launch the voting. Amazing. I'm just going to do quick vote and only 20 seconds, but what you will see is various different screens and you have to vote for which one you are preferring.
I really love the voting in Curipod. It's not something you see elsewhere very often, and it really gets the class. It stops it from being about just the teacher and each individual pupil, and it makes it about the group.
I love these drawings. So good. Oh look, holding doors open. I think the winning one is that sharing. If that was you and you're willing to pop it in the chat. And again, another kind of holding door open on a manners as well, which is all just lovely. Well done. That's amazing. So hopefully you will see from those quick examples how Curipod offers a fantastic tool set to allow you to run a really interactive lesson, gathering responses and information from learners in each group. And as I say, we'll include a little Curipod guide within the follow-up email, which will give you a little bit more information about it and allow you to kind of try it out for yourself. Now, I'm going to move on to the last tool of the session, and that is Padlet, but specifically a powerful feature in Padlet called breakout links. And it's absolutely perfect for shared devices and groups of learners. So I've already got my Padlet set up on the screen here, which you can see, hopefully, in a wee second. Now, this isn't just basic brainstorming. This breakout linked features, it allows you to use one main Padlet as a central hub. So what you're seeing on the screen now is that central hub, but it's actually been divided into smaller private boards for focused group work, which can be really beneficial for our 1 to 5 pupils because it brings structure to collaboration instead of chaos on one giant wall. Each small group working on their single iPad is automatically linked to a group and their dedicated task. So we're going to try that out. And to do this, I have tried to be really, really clever here, and I'm hoping it's going to work. But I have 3 QR codes that I'm going to show you on a slide. And it's going to be based off the first letter of your first name as to which one you scan. So if your first name begins with A or B, you're going to scan the first QR code. If it begins with C to J, you're in group 2, scan the second one. And if you are in K to Z, you're going to scan the third one there. Hopefully that gives us roughly enough in each group, because I did try to work it out based on sign-ups earlier, so hopefully that works. So when you scan that QR code, it's going to take you to a specific group. So you will only see the questions in that group. Okay, so I will ask you when you're there to answer it. Padlet works best on the browser. If you do have the Padlet app on your device, we usually tend to say delete it, because it perfectly functions on the browser, which is great. Now, what I'll do is, if everybody's now scanned that QR code, I'm hoping me kind of talking has given you a bit of time. I am going to go back to the Padlet screen so that you can see what I would see as the teacher. And what you should see is that main wall, but people having answered some of the questions. Okay, so if you were doing this as a whole class and it was one board, it can be quite distracting when you see all the different sections and people answering things. I know I've used it in staff meetings before, and sometimes you're looking at what's going on in the other sections, etc. Whereas this gives the group a focus because they're only seeing what's for them. And then when you bring it back together, you can use your Apple TVs to screen share the answers up, and then you can have a wider class discussion on the full board. But obviously pupils are just working on their own. So I've asked a couple of cheeky questions, Kerry. I've asked what folk are having for their dinner tonight because I'm always nosy, and I always love a wee bit of dinner inspo. I've also asked in group 2 what people are, what their favourite flavour of ice cream is, because mine's is banana and it's not very popular, but it's banana over everything for me. I don't like bananas, but I like banana ice cream. And then in the third group, I've asked a question about the session, and then your favourite act of kindness based on World Kindness Day theme today as well. So obviously you can structure it based on what you're doing in your class. So let's just say one team could be recording character feelings, another could be doing the setting of the story, or if you're doing STEM, one could be recording documenting the plan, another could be doing the test results, etc. You can apply it to any type of context, which is great. So I think we've got a few people, mince and tatties. I love mince and tatties. I've not had that for ages.
I need to know what creamy peppercorn steak pasta is because it sounds right up my street.
Yeah, we might need a recipe for that one, I think. This is so good. And the other thing actually I wish I'd asked was what good TV series folks are watching nowadays, because the probationers session, they gave me loads of good examples and I'm now really running out. So I'm going to need to get some new series on the go. But yeah, so you can see how that works for the different groups and then how we can then pull that back together as the teacher. Now, setting this up, I'm going to show you very quickly where the settings are for this. So down the right hand side of my screen, you'll see that I've got a settings cog. When I tap on that, I am then looking at it's the layout option. Under format, it has to be columns. That's the only way this will work with the columns set up. Obviously you can play about with all the different appearance, colours and things like that, but it has to be the column set that's there. And then to share this, if I come out of settings and I go to the share icon, which is at the top under my profile pic, and then I scroll down on the permissions, you'll see under links, I have the option for breakout rooms. And there's my 3 sections there. I would copy each link. I can then use a QR code generator to then create the individual QR codes to send to or to use with each group, whether you're printing that off for the table, etc., etc. Or I could copy the link and drop it into 3 individual notes on my iPad and airdrop the note to the correct group to tap on. See, I did tell you earlier that I can always find a way to use notes within a classroom. It's one of my personal talents of mine. But yeah, so there's a couple of ways you can obviously share either the link or the QR code, etc. And that is a very quick breakout links tour. Kerry, anything from you?
No, apart from the fact that I love this breakout links feature. It's one of my favourite things that's been added to Padlet recently. Really good.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. So the ideas and inspiration demo section of our session might be over for today, but the ideas and activities don't have to be. To keep the momentum rolling, I want to make you aware of a couple of brilliant resources that are available. First off is the creative activities for early learners and students. There's two different versions here. Don't be put off by it saying early learners for the first one, because a lot of these activities you can use kind of across any stage with a bit of scaffolding and adaptation, which is great. They're full of practical quick start ideas that you can use with your devices, and I'll make sure I link them in the follow-up email. There is also the everyone can create resources as well, which again I will link, but it brings creativity. There's lots of frameworks to bring creativity into every subject, which hopefully makes it super easy to integrate the technology purposefully into your 1 to 5 classrooms, give you some further ideas and spark info that you can take forward with your pupils. Kerry, before I finish up, is there anything that you want to finally add?
Nope, I'm all good, managing.
Amazing. So with that, we've reached the end of our session today. Thank you so much for your participation and the enthusiasm within the chat and within our Curie Pods and Padlets as well, because we've got a wee bit of feedback there. I hope you're leaving feeling a little bit inspired and maybe equipped with some tangible tools for your classroom. We've covered a lot, from the Curie Pods instant engagement, Padlet structured collaboration, and don't forget those great Apple resources as well that we've just shared. If you need anything or you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And if you do implement any of these tools in your classroom or any of these activities and you're using Blue Sky, please don't forget to tag us so that we can see what you're up to, because we always do like seeing everything that you're doing within your classroom. I'm just looking at the chat, Kerry. Blue Lights on BBC iPlayer, thank you so much. That I've not watched that, so that's definitely going on the list, as are some of your dinner suggestions, I think, as well. But thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.